The boy falls for an entirety of a second, which could have been forever, in the eternal darkness. Suddenly a light pierced his soul, and the feeling can only be described as a total release, followed by an awakening. The feeling was like getting up from a dream, except much more vivid. Banis looks at his hand and realizes his name does not sound right to him, and his hands are incredibly large. "Banis," he says aloud. "What an odd name." Banis got up in a daze and looked in the mirror to see a blurry image of a diseased child. The image came to focus, and Banis begins to see himself as he appears to the others, as a young man in his 20s. The room is messy with books and clothes scattered everywhere. Walking to the dresser, he grasps a picture of a young woman. He sees familiarity in the picture, but cannot remember who it is. Banis walks outside, and memories start flowing into his mind. He reaches out with his hands and falls unconscious. Banis starts to dream about himself as a third person. He watches himself playing as a child with his sister, mother, and the girl next door. The next part of the dream allows him to peer into his high school and college years. Most of the dream takes place in a wrestling mat at gymnasium that outlines a passion for sporting competition. As from the start of the dream, there is always the same beautiful girl depicted that is watching and cheering for Banis in all his exploits. Time in the dream stops to reveal a glimpse of a possible future. A glorious bird of flame is shown fighting a three-headed dog. The dream ends when the bird of light seems to be winning, but just then a similar bird of dark black attacks the bird of light. Time passes and Banis wakes up screaming the word Draco. Heat emanates from Banis as a crowd of people gather around him. Banis slips back into unconsciousness again, and when he wakes next, he finds himself in a hospital bed, surrounded by a crowd of astonished doctors, orderlies, and nurses. Confused, Banis looks at them and says, "What can I say? My mother was a toaster oven." Secretly, Banis wonders what a toaster oven was. For days, the doctors closely monitored Banis to find out what was the source of his outbreak. During his stay in the hospital, as he slept, he dreamt of the world around him and started to realize where he was. He looked on a calendar and learned that the date was March 23rd, 2010. Banis lay back in his bed and said to himself, "My name is Banis," with a tone of disbelief. "But who is Banis?" he replies to himself. Friendships and the roles in his life start to replay like scenes from a movie. His first girlfriend, Cheryl, how blonde her hair was. He remembers the way she smiled at him all the time, and her famous line she would always say, "Good morning, free bird." Visions of his childhood and his parents going as far back to his birth were next. The movie in his mind was playing backwards, and not only did he witness himself being given life, he was looking upon himself through generations of his family, except before his life as it was now. He pictured himself as a little boy. His hair was matted and he looked cold and sick. The figure was dressed in tattered clothes that were dark brown and looked very old. As Banis gets closer to the image, putting his hand out, the boy suddenly begins looking very hot. Banis can only stand and look at the boy. As the boy gets so hot, little fires burst open from the areas of his clothes. Finally, the boy, bathed in fire, succeeds in touching Banis. The figure of the boy breathed a small breath of flame, locking eyes with Banis. The figure of the boy is now in total flame, burning as bright as an iron forge. From the area the boy touched on Banis's body, a single mark resembling a phoenix forms. It burns hot on Banis's chest, so hot that he has to tear off his hospital gown. Banis's breath gets faster and his muscles burn. A strange power flows forth out of his pores. Gigantic wings of fire flow out from his back and shoulders. The power of the flame engulfs the rest of his body. Oddly, after a couple moments of horrific shouting, Banis seems to accept the power as it overcomes him. A noise occurs like the earth shattering, and a vision of an incredible war taking place at the foot of Mount Olympus between the Titans and the gods appears to him.